Okay. So we were discussing the basics of data visualization. So where we reached last time, we were discussing that we have mainly three phases to understand how to visualize our data. We have our perceiving phase, the interpreting phase, and the comprehending phase. Hopefully today we can close up on the first chapter. So perceiving, what does it show? Means that I want to know what I'm seeing. Where's the big, the medium, and the small data, how things are being compared, how to compare them even, and what's the relationship that exists between the types of data that I'm dealing with. The interpreting part is that I will be understanding what does the data mean, what is good and what is bad of it. Is it meaningful or insignificant? Is it usual or unusual? Is it expected or unexpected? The comprehending part mainly means the understanding part, which means that what does this data mean? Where are the main messages? What have I learned? Any actions that I should be taking? And all of that. So if we look to these characteristics of the different stages, and for any of you who is attending for the first time, this is a recorded session that I will be posting later on the classroom for your reviews, for your reference. And this course is mainly, it's a theoretical course, as you know. There is nothing to memorize, only you should keep up and comprehend and understand the meaning of whatever is being discussed. So if we look to our first characteristic, which is the perceiving part, it concerns the act of simply being able to read a chart, which means how we are going to read it. What does this chart shows to us? What do we understand? What do we get from it? How easily can you get a sense of the values of the data being portrayed? Where are the largest and the middle, as I said? What's the proportion? What's the relationship between them? For the interpreting part, which is a very important part, it's mainly the next stage of understanding or following on the perceiving one. So what we need to understand is we should know if the data we are dealing with, is it big? Is it small? Is it better? What does it mean to go up or down? Which means, what does this data, if it's going up, what does that mean? If the data is going down, what does that mean? What's the relationship or what's the common phase between all the data? Are they meaningful or are they insignificant? Which means, am I getting something out of this data? Am I understanding, or is it just a random phase of data set? Is the decline of that category especially surprising? Of course. Now, the viewer's ability to form these kind of interpretation, it is based on many things. It's influenced by their pre-existing knowledge about the portrait subject and their capacity to utilize that knowledge to frame the implications of what has been read. So imagine that we are analyzing maybe data about football, and the viewer or the person that is being held with the discussion, he doesn't know about football, or mainly that he is not a fan of the sport, or mainly it's meaningless or it's insignificant for him, which means that all the data being discussed, it doesn't, or it won't even lead to a solution, or maybe it won't even lead to a surprising ending. It won't lead to anything with this viewer. Why? Because simply this viewer is not interested in the topic. He doesn't know what we are talking about. Therefore, he will not understand the types of data that we are dealing with. So that's the first thing, the pre-knowledge of the viewer, whether or not he knows what we are dealing with. They will need, of course, to make a suitable design So the design of the representation of our data should, of course, be suitable for the user to be friendly, to understand and to deal with. And as I mentioned last week, that whenever the eye is clear and whenever the eye is comfortable reading data, the analyzing part or the interpreting part will be much easier for the viewer, because you are representing this data in a very simple way that he can understand and he is totally friendly with. Now, for the comprehending, it involves, of course, reasoning, which is very important. We are reasoning the consequence of the perceiving and the interpreting stages to arrive, of course, at a personal reflection of what all this means to them. So what we want to reach at the end is the meaning of this data, for the viewer, and what is he taking from us? How does this information make a difference? And of course, depending on the pre-knowledge of the user or the viewer, as I said, why is it a relevant data? What wants or needs does it serve? Does it serve the needs that the user or the viewer is viewing? Is it the topic that he is searching for? Is it providing results, or is it providing the satisfaction that he was looking for to mainly serve this website and read this chart and analyze this data? Has it confirmed that I knew or possibly suspected beforehand, or enlightened me with new knowledge, which means enlightened with new knowledge, which means is the viewer, after analyzing, after deceiving, or maybe after understanding everything that has been discussed in this data set, did he learn anything? Did he was it good for him? Was it insignificant? Did he like it? Did he not like it? Mainly we see on many websites regarding this part, many feedback places, maybe to rate some article with 1, 2, 3, or 5 stars. Okay, so which gives mainly also the person who wrote the article, if the person who was reading it or was viewing it, what is his feedback over it? Did he understand it? Did it mean even anything for him or not? Did this experience impact the viewer in any emotional way, or left him, or me, as I'm referring to myself, feeling somewhat indifferent as a consequence? Which means, after reading all this stuff, after reading all this data, did it make any difference? Was it insignificant? Emotionally, did it leave any feedback? Does the context of what understanding that I acquired lead me to take actions? Does these actions, does whatever I read, does it need to be held with taking actions later on? This is the first example of that. Let's see what do we see in this chart. So if anyone wants to analyze with me, I'll be happy with that. The first thing is that we have two parts. We have the games one and we have the goals one. This is mainly a statistics for the games and the goals that Lionel Messi scored for Barcelona. So if you look here on the x-axis, this is how you mainly visualize your data. We have the x-axis and we have the y-axis. So the first bar, or the blue bar, as the legend, so we have here the legend, indicates the legend is what explanation of what the chart is made of. So first of all, the first bar, it represents the years. As we can see, these are the years that that Lionel Messi played with or was with Barcelona with. And what does this number represent? This is the month, not to confuse with the goal. And these are here the number of scoring ones. Okay, so represented in these bars. So how do we read this? We go on the 2004 years, where is this bar leading us? Somewhere between 0 and 10. If we go here to the 2006 one, where is the bar leading us? Somewhere here between 10 and 20, I would say maybe 17. So this is how the way of understanding the representation of our data. This is how we know how this data is being represented in each and every chart. So this is mainly a simple example of the representation of the data and how do we read the data and how do we even understand this, how this data is being held. So this is mainly an explanation for that. If you look across the entire chart, we are identifying big, small, and medium values. And the form of overall sense of the general value rankings. So after analyzing the chart, we can easily read these descriptions and understand what has been going on. Now, moving on to the importance of the conviction part. What is the conviction part? The conviction is the key guidance that is now most helpfully and shapes and supports my convictions that come from ideas outside the boundaries of visualization design in the shape of the work of Dieter Rams. Who is Dieter Rams? Rams was a German industrial and product designer who he was most famously associated with the Braun company, if anyone heard of it. In the late 70s or the 80s, he was becoming concerned about the state and direction of design thinking, and he gives the prominent role of the industry, and he felt as responsibility to challenge himself, his own work and his own thinking against a simple question: is my design a good design? Which each and every data designer asks this question to himself. Does this design that I am representing, is it a good one? Is it a bad one? Is it convenient? Is it inconvenient? Will it deliver the message as appropriate? Will it lead the viewer to be even more interested about what he is reading, about what he is seeing? Okay, so we realize that it goes as follows. The first point is that the good design is innovative. The good design, it makes a product useful. It is aesthetic. It makes a product understandable. It is unobtrusive. It is honest, which is a very important part, the honest and the truth that we will be dealing on later on. The good design, of course, is long-lasting. It lasts for a very long time to refer to. It is down to the last detail, so it covers all the details and it goes even to the last one. It is environmentally friendly, so it is friendly for any viewer to deal with, and is a little design as possible, because when the design even goes even larger, it will be harder to understand and harder to always analyze, because the data and the shape of the design is getting bigger. So that's not most of all healthy at all times. So we have three principles about that, and they are in big notes or in big titles as follows. The first one is that good data visualization is trustworthy. Okay, it is accessible and it is elegant. So let's see what each and every one of that means. The first principle is that good data is trustworthy. The notation of trust is uppermost in your thoughts in the first or maybe three principles of good visualization design. This maps directly onto one of Ram's general principles of good design, namely that good design is honest. There is an important distinction to make, of course, between trust and truth. You even know that maybe by your daily life. Truth is an obligation. You should never create work, to be misleading in content, nor should you claim something presents the truth if it is evidentially cannot be supported by what you are presenting. It can be false data or data that is not related about your presentation. For most people, the difference between truth and untruth, they should be beyond dispute. For that, they will be unable or unwilling to be truthful, as simple as that, or who are ignorant of how to differentiate. It is probably worth putting this book away, or this whatever we are dealing with away, because I shouldn't be even telling you how to deal with bad things, because you should not. It's not likely to change your perspective. But trust, it has to be earned. But how do we earn this trust? It is very hard to earn, but it is very easy to lose, which means you can represent or visualize many types of data for many types of viewers. It will take you 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe dozens of sketches or schemas to gain the viewer's trust. But on the first mistake, or on the first time you go wrong with your data, or you present false data, or you are not truthful to your viewer, you will lose his trust. Now, if you look at this chart, it is the percentage of each age group that are homeowners in England. This is between 1981 and 2012. The first thing what leads a user to analyze this chart, what leads the user to look at this diagram, to look at this chart. This chart, of course, with the numbers, with the information that it is presenting, it should be trustful, which means the data or the numbers being presented should be true. So this is the difference right here between true and trustful, because when these numbers are true, when this information is true, when this information is feeding back something that is truly represented, you will gain the trust of your viewer. Now, looking at this legend, we can see three things: the calendar years that are represented in these colors, and the financial years, which are represented in these colors. So this makes it even more friendly for the viewer to visualize by his own eyes, represented right here on, as I said, the x-axis and the y-axis, giving the percentage of the people who are owners in England, who own a home. Okay, so the most important part in this, or even in each and every schema that you guys as data representers, or you are having a research and you want to represent or visualize your data, the most important part is that the numbers and the data that you are showing and you are presenting, they should be true for you to earn the trust of your viewer. That leading that your viewer will, of course, be waiting for your articles, or maybe the representation of your data. So both port royals are truthful. In the first visualization produced by the UK office for the ONS, the commands greater credibility and therefore far more trust than the second visualization. Why? Because the primary reason of this, or for this, begins with the color choice. So we are talking here about the design. They are relatively low key in the ONS graphic, colorful but subdued. They are conveying a certain assurance. They are, in contrast, this Daily Mail part or color palette they feel needy. So they weren't satisfied with the type or the representation of the data. This is something else. This is the falling number of young homeowners. So this is the contrary of the other one. What we see, the main difference between this schema and the other one, or maybe this chart and the previous one, first of all, is the design. So if you look at this design, maybe we can find it more attractive, more friendly to use, more significant for us to use. if you look at here, the percentage which is represented in a better way than the other one. If you look at these bars, maybe it's the same legend. It's nothing maybe much in difference here. But when we look at this design for the first time, we find it attractive maybe by the choice of the colors, by the background of the key, by the legend on the y-axis of the percentages, which makes it more accurate, which makes it more easy for us to analyze. So this is also an important part for you guys to know how to deal with when you are representing these types of data. Another example here is the gun deaths in Florida. So these are the number of murders committed using firearms. What does this schema shows us? Okay, so we have here the part of the 90s, the part of the 2000s and 2010s, which means after that. And this is the number of these murders being happened. So you see they were in peak. This is the peak of it. Then it was going down, then going up. Okay, then down, then up. So this is the diagram here that represents these numbers. In the 2005 part, stand your own ground law was inflicted, if you ever heard of that. So what we can analyze or get out of this chart, first of all, the source of it, which is the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Mainly when you read this sentence, the first thing that pops into your mind is that this is the source of the data can be reliable. Why? Because maybe it's a government part, or this is coming out of the government or a governmental section. So the first thing by its title is that it gained your trust as a viewer of this data. But if this data trustworthy, of course, the numbers in it should be true, coming out of the source of the government part, which means that they wouldn't publish or talk about numbers that were not true or maybe not too exact. And the data is being represented in this curve right here, going down, then going up. So this is another example of data representation. The second principle is that good data, it should be accessible. The second one of the three principles of the good visualization, it helps to inform a judgment about how best to facilitate your viewers through the process of understanding. It's informed by three Rams general good principle, which is it makes the product useful, understandable, and unobtrusive. Now, talking about this principle, we have a very important thing, which is the reward and the effort. To facilitate understanding for your audience, we are about to deliver this accessibility. It's the essence of this principle, which means to remove design-related obstacles faced by your viewers when undertaking this process of understanding. So you need to make it more accessible for the user, to help you with that. Stated another way, a viewer should experience minimum friction between the act of understanding effort and the achieving of understanding, which is, of course, the reward. So that's a very important principle to know. The third one, which is good data visualization, it should be elegant. What do we mean by that? Elegance in design is the final principle of good visualization design. It relates closely to the essence of the three Rams general principles, which is that good data is aesthetic. It goes down to the last detail as possible, and it has the most little design. What is elegant design? when we say that this design is elegant, what does that mean? Elegant design is about seeking to achieve a visual quality that will attract your audience and, of course, sustain that sentiment throughout the experience. Far beyond just the initial moments of engagement, this is presented as the third principle of good visualization, as we said. So any choices you make towards achieving elegance, they must not undermine the accomplishment of trustworthiness and accessibility in your design. So they are all the three principles attached. Indeed, in pursuing the achievement of the other principles, elegance may have already arrived as a byproduct of trustworthy and accessible design, of course, in the way it's being thought of. Now, the visual look and feel of your work will be the first thing viewers encounter before experiencing the consequences of your other principle-led thinking. It is therefore standing that optimism of the perceived appeal of your work that will have a great impact on your viewers, which means when being elegant in these kind of designs, you will be considered a very attractive data presenter for all of the users that are viewing your types of data. If you look at this, this is the Vienna. If Vienna was an apartment, which means what is meant of that, look at these numbers. These numbers are maybe representing some designs, as we are talking with Vienna as maybe it's an apartment. Any design choices you make with the aim of enhancing appeal through novelty for fun, it needs to support and not to distract, of course, from the core aim of facilitating understanding. So always be led by your data and your audience, not your ideas, which means that you should always satisfy what your audience wants. You should always satisfy what your audience needs from you guys. Okay, so moving on. This is, of course, another example. This is the dark outlook. The dark outlook is this review or this chart. It took place in China. What happened there? There was a sudden and big increase in the prices of chocolate. The prices of chocolate were going up in China. So at this period, of course. Now, if you look at this design, what specializes this design is right here. Look at these chocolate bars. These are Kit Kat bars in this chart. They used Kit Kat bars to represent the increasing of the prices of these chocolates. And the X and Y axis here are the years. Look here at the years. And these are the prices accordingly. So they did it in a very elegant way, which is very appealing and very attractive to each and every user. So this is the first appealing idea which they are using. What are they using? They are using chocolate bars in a way to increase or to show the increase of the prices of the chocolate at that time. Of course, here we have the numbers of what was going on. They did the details, of course, right here. And this is of 16,000 contracts that they followed a number of people, asking them and doing statistics about that. But what we should take out of this olive chart is this part right here. This part it's a very important one. It's a very attractive one. All the article or the data representation is based on this representation right here, on this part of the article, which is very appealing and very attractive to any viewer, that they are, first of all, even they called it a dark outlook, and they represented chocolate bars to represent the increase and the going up of the prices of chocolate in China at that period. And as I said, the bar chart in this figure, it reflects using the Kit Kat style fingers, so chocolate for each bar, and a foil wrapper background. So they use the wrapper of the chocolate bar. It offers an elegant and appealing presentation that is congruent with its subject. So of course, this representation, it is related directly to the subject that was being discussed. It allows the personality to express itself in this time and place where such a flair is supportive, and it aims of facilitating understanding. So whoever is viewing this data or reading this article, we just made it more friendly and more easier for him to understand what's going on and what are we mainly talking about. After all, a singularity of style is a dull existence. So it should not be as simple as always that. As groove as this guy, who I don't personally know, he sang, it was a song that he said, if everybody looked the same, we'd get tired of looking at each other. Now, denoting that, we go back to the same concept that if the design, it looked the same, all the designs look the same, all the representations look the same, we will be tired or boring of looking at it and analyzing it, because we are doing the same representation, that there is something new. There is nothing new actually. So we have always to update our design to keep it more appealing for the user, for the audience needs. What does the audience want from this data? What are they looking to understand? What are they seeking to get the knowledge of? So all of these important stuff, they play a big role in visualizing and understanding all the data that is being held at this part. Now, we have here some points to understand in a very fast way. We have the distinctions and the glossary. Talking the distinctions, information visualization, infographics, we have visual analytics, we have data art. I will be conducting or maybe talking about each point in more details next time. We have here data science, we have data journalism, we have scientific visualization. In the glossary part, we have roles and terminology of project, and that's a very important part, that even what you are working on is only seen as a small part of visualization task, even it is if it was something not hard to do, even it was something very easy in your thoughts, you should always consider it as a project. So you should always consider it as a project that requires the same workflow process approach as a big one. The visualizer, who is, this is the role that I am assigning to each and every one of you. It's the person making the visualization of the data. It could be even more realistic to use a term like maybe researcher, analyst, creator, and all of these terms that can be used as well to convey the same meaning. The viewer is the person who is assigned to receive this data. The audience, which is considered the group of people to whom I am addressing and intending to serve the work. The consuming, which is generally the act of the viewer. So the viewer will be consuming this data. We have the creator. This term will be mainly used in contrast with consuming, the separate of the focus between the act of the visualizer and the act of the viewer. We have data terminology, which is the raw data, also known as primary data, which means the most important part of data. This is data that has not been subjected to statistical treatment for any other transformations. The data set, it is the collection of data values upon we are based on, which means maybe the prices of the chocolate, the years where the chocolate was increasing. This is our data set. The tabulation is a table of data based on rows and columns as we were representing. The rows are records, instance of things, and the columns are the variables. So this is the worldwide legend that we are dealing with. Variables are related items that data held in a data set. It describes the characteristic of the record. It meant as to be names, dates, genders, or even salaries, or even prices, as we just saw. A series is a series of values. Essentially, it's a row of related values in a table. An example of this series would be the highest temperature in a city for each month or each year. So we are talking about the peak one right here. Okay, so this meeting will end in less than a minute. Please join immediately.